to then talk into the microphone. And if you forget, I'm sure Chairman Davis will, just remind you to turn the talk button on.
Testing. Okay, good. Testing.
This hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research to highlight research innovations achieved by our nation's agricultural colleges and universities will come to order. I'd like to first welcome everybody. I'll offer my opening statement here momentarily, too. I apologize for being somewhat late. One of those few occasions here where the elevators weren't working too well in the Longworth building. And in order to try and save one of my, well, some of us, actually, I was trying to save, Mr. Chairman, one of your fellow Texas colleagues who was stuck with a little bit of the elevator door open. Note to self, don't stick your finger in there. Almost lost it, but Kevin Brady's doing fine, so he's okay. So my apologies and my excuse, because the chairman, Mr. Conaway, always likes to start hearings on time, and I don't want him to take away my gavel. So thank you again for coming, and I'd like to begin with my opening statement. Good morning. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody here. This is the third in a series of hearings highlighting ag research, extension, and education programs for this subcommittee. On April 14th, we had the honor of hosting Deputy Secretary of Agriculture Hardin, along with 17 bright and gifted young people involved in the 4-H program. These young men and women spoke to us about the need and opportunity to build a coalition of urban and rural youth to enhance agricultural knowledge across our nation. Then on July 15th, the full Agriculture Committee held a historic hearing involving the presidents of all 19 1890 land-grant universities in order to commemorate the 125th anniversary of the enactment of the Second Morrill Act. This act, like its predecessor in 1862, contributed to our nation's capacity to conduct research in support of agricultural production through the creation of land-grant universities. Since that time, we have added to our capacity by providing land-grant status to designated tribal colleges in 1994 and quasi-land-grant status to cooperative forestry colleges under the McIntyre-Stennis Act, our nation's veterinary colleges under the Animal Health and Disease Capacity and Infrastructure Program, and most recently, Hispanic-serving agricultural colleges and universities in 2008. We have likewise recognized the investment in agricultural research capacity in numerous unaffiliated colleges and universities and have authorized funding to further augment capacity and infrastructure at these designated non-land-grant colleges of ag. Together, this system of agricultural colleges and universities provides our nation's farmers and ranchers with tremendous advances in technology, as well as helping to solve problems ranging from food safety to resource conservation, from nutrition to water quality, and from diseases of livestock and crops to renewable energy production. 2 weeks ago, the Agriculture Committee heard from the various mission areas and agencies of the USDA. Among the testimony we heard was commentary from the Research, Education, and Economics mission area, highlighting the return on investment from ag research. For example, the Ag Research Service introduced 348 new plant varieties last year and filed 110 patent applications. Some of the work done by ARS has resulted in the insecticide DEET, the most common active ingredient in insect repellents, flaked mashed potatoes, sliced apples that stay fresh longer, and frozen foods. Now, the flaked mashed potatoes don't come close to the real thing, but they're good in a hurry. The conclusion drawn by many stakeholders in that we must prioritize food and agricultural research within our national policy discussions. I'm convinced by what I've seen that the public support for ag research does in fact have a very high rate of return. In fact, the International Food Policy Research Institute, having studied the impact of ag research and extension published since 1953, has concluded that this investment has provided an annual rate of return of 48%. I'd like my 401k to do that. How about each of you? And to echo comments made by Pope Francis during his address to Congress just last week, I am confident that America's outstanding academic and research institutions can make a vital contribution in the years ahead. We recognize that as we approach our discussions in developing the next Farm Bill, there are numerous policy changes confronting our nation's research sector. Today, we will begin those discussions. In doing so, we have assembled a great panel of preeminent researchers representing some of our most illustrious agricultural colleges and universities, and have asked that they focus on the successes that have resulted from this federal investment. I'm particularly honored that the Dean of the University of Illinois College of Agriculture and my friend, Dr. Bob Hauser, has joined us today and is participating in the hearing. Dr. Hauser has served on the faculty in the College of Agriculture at the U of I for more than 3 decades and understands the importance of the agricultural research conducted at America's land-grant universities. I look forward to hearing from him and the other distinguished members of our panel about some of the great success stories from our agricultural institutions across the country. And Dr. Hauser, I have to give you credit. You came just at the right time to the event I was at Saturday at the U of I, just in time to not have to hear me speak. That was very good. Yeah, exactly. And before I introduce the rest of the panel, I'd first like to recognize the distinguished ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Del Bene, for her opening statement, as well as to introduce her honored guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for calling today's hearing on a topic that we're both passionate about. And thanks to all of our witnesses for being here today. I'm especially excited to have Dr. Jim Moyer from Washington State University here to share his perspective on this issue and explain some of the great research being done at Washington State University. Dr. Moyer is the Associate Dean of Research for the College of Agricultural, Human, and Natural Resource Sciences at Washington State University. And while the main campus is located in Pullman on the eastern side of Washington State, closer to Congressman Newhouse's region, they also have an extension in Mount Vernon in my district, and an extension where they're doing fantastic work, particularly in agriculture. Dr. Moyer has been doing research in the field for over 30 years. Sorry to date you there, but I'm very proud to have him here, and we look forward to your testimony. Research provides the foundation for innovation, particularly in agriculture. Not only that, but it's important that researchers have the certainty to see a project through to the end. Starting and stopping research because funding runs out is highly detrimental. As a former businesswoman, I understand that when the federal government invests in research, it saves us money in the long run. And it might not always be clear to everyone why basic research is important or what it will teach us, but that work has been very critical. There's even an award called the Golden Goose Award, which celebrates obscure science to show how basic research, even research that may sound odd, can lead to major breakthroughs and significant impacts on society. Last year, as hopefully everyone in this room knows, we passed a 5-year farm bill. A very important part of the 2014 Farm Bill for my district and for many others was that it included unprecedented funding levels for research on specialty crops, some of which is being done at Washington State University's Mount Vernon campus. Programs like the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, SCRI, gives us a great return on our investment. And we're fortunate to have fantastic universities across the country doing all kinds of valuable research. The Agriculture Committee recently held a hearing to mark the 125th anniversary of the enactment of the Morrill Act of 1890, which authorized additional direct appropriations for the land-grant colleges of agriculture that had been established under the first Morrill Act of 1862. Not investing in research harms our economic competitiveness and hinders the important work that's been started in many areas. I'm pleased we're holding this hearing to learn about the innovative work being done throughout the research, extension, and education communities, and to learn about the challenges that you're facing. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Del Bene. The chair would request that other members submit their opening statements for the record so that witnesses may begin their testimony and to ensure there's ample time for questions. The chair would like to remind members that they will be recognized for questioning in order of seniority for members who were present at the start of the hearing. After that, members will be recognized in the order of their arrival. I do appreciate the members' understanding. Witnesses are reminded to limit their oral presentations to 5 minutes. All written statements will be submitted for the record. Again, I'd like to welcome all of our witnesses to the table, Dr. Hauser, Dr. Moyer, and now I'd like to also welcome Dr. Mindy Brashier, the Director of the International Center for Food Industry Excellence at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. It's okay, it's not the University of Illinois, and Mike's not here to hear that. Dr. Michael Heighthouse, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Florida International University in North Miami, Florida. And thank you for spending a few minutes with your Congressman Carlos Curbelo, as he came by earlier today too. Dr. Michael P. Lacy, Professor and Department Head, the Department of Poultry Science at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, and Dr. Douglas D. Buehler, Senior Associate Dean for Research in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. And I ask that you and my colleague, Mr. Molinar, take it easy on the University of Illinois this year in football. Dr. Hauser, speaking of the University of Illinois, please begin when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research, as mentioned, I'm Bob Hauser, Dean of the College of Agriculture, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences. At Illinois, the Experiment Station and Illinois Extension is also under the Dean's supervision. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the subject of agricultural research and innovation. I'll focus my remarks on agricultural research issues related to major crops and renewable energy crops and the role of USDA NIFA funding. While my written testimony expands on points made during the next 4 or 5 minutes, I'd like to emphasize 3 take-home messages. First, federal-state partnership for agricultural research between USDA and state agricultural experiment stations has been a huge success, and we need to ensure that same success going forward by ensuring appropriate capacity. Second, agricultural research and development benefits greatly from partnership between public and private institutions. And finally, the need for agricultural research, especially among major crops, is absolutely critical for consumers worldwide. For context, our college research derives support from many sources with annual research expenditures at about $45 million. Our competitive research support from USDA is roughly equal to our USDA formula funds, and we are funded at higher levels from other federal agencies and from private companies. We've also been awarded significant grants from the USAID. Now, I cited several examples in my written testimony of successful crop research assisted by USDA NIFA involving nitrogen uptake, flowering response, photosynthesis, planting density, and on and on. And these successes often involve other efforts and partnerships at the University of Illinois involving, for example, our Plant Breeding Center and the Energy Biosciences Institutes and others. But an important point is that USDA projects are instrumental in a positive proof of concept and then leveraged into much more. Another thing to keep in mind is that we translate science for use in practice, whether it's technology or whether it's information. I just mentioned some technology examples, but a couple other information examples include USDA assistance in helping us develop FarmDoc, a leading platform for farm and risk management research and decision tools, and USDA has also helped us put the timely information in the hands of producers during the implementation of the most recent Farm Bill. Again, as illustrated by most of these examples, we like to leverage resources through these partnerships. Just yesterday, for example, a major chemical and agricultural technology company launched an innovation center on our campus that looks to partner with us in many ways, including improved cropping systems. But we do have some challenges. Those challenges are often related to declining state support for agricultural research and extension. As higher education relies more on tuition, we cannot justify subsidizing agricultural research activity with student dollars. With respect to crop sciences, attracting sufficient number of top students is an issue, even though the jobs are plentiful for those students. Our research productivity in this area, measured in a competitive grant funding, has been excellent, but crop research, like all research in academia, is driven by grant opportunities. But funding for the locally applied research, that locally applied research in this area has diminished. Illinois has lost substantial capacity for crops research, but one example is a recent budget cut devoted to crops in 4 field research centers. But despite these challenges, there are exceptional opportunities for Illinois and our sister institutions. Secretary Vilsack addressed us on campus about international food security a couple weeks ago, and he emphasized the need to invest more in agricultural research and education because all are beneficiaries of agriculture, he argued, and consequently land-grant universities must have capacity to conduct agricultural research and education in the next levels of competency. I want to wrap things up here with 4 policy implications. First, agriculture, especially major crop agriculture, has global implications. Invest to meet those global challenges, but understand the importance of science applied locally. 2, emphasize partnerships appropriately. Be willing to apply federal resources as a public good where the gaps exist. 3, emphasize competitiveness, but be smart about capacity and work with the states to ensure the health of land-grant institutions. And finally, and this is very important, universities invest in scientific research in response to grantors. If resources are not apparent in agriculture, universities will invest in other areas. So with that, I wish to thank the committee again for the opportunity to share our perspective, and we appreciate your support. Very much appreciate your support of agricultural research, education, and outreach.
Thank you, Dr. Hauser. Dr. Moyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Del Bene, Congressman Newhouse, and other members of the subcommittee. Washington agriculture is one of the most diverse in the United States, growing over 200 different crops, many of which are classified as specialty crops. Washington is #1 nationally in the production of 10 of those crops, including apples, cherries, hops, and pears, and second in production of 8 others, including grapes, onions, and potatoes. Specialty crops represent more than half of Washington's agricultural economy and play a significant role in the agricultural economy of many other states as well. And further, specialty crops provide the fruits and vegetables that are the foundation of a healthy diet for everyone. Feeding an increasing global population in the face of 21st century challenges that include climate change, diminishing water supplies, and disease and pests requires 21st century research responses. This morning, I would like to highlight WSU's unique contributions to the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, or SCRI, funded by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture as part of that solution. SCRI is designed to serve the needs of the broader national agriculture industry by requiring multi-institutional and stakeholder involvement. This is a thoughtful feature that brings together the expertise needed to address complex problems and to assure relevance. Since 2008, WSU faculty have been lead investigators or funded collaborators on 38 SCRI program grants that brought over $36 million to WSU to support Washington's agriculture, and a similar amount was awarded to collaborating land-grant institutions. These grants funded research to improve production practices, develop systems approaches to crop management, study climate change, pest and disease management, precision agriculture and automation, and develop genomic and bioinformatic tools to aid plant breeding efforts. This morning, I will highlight 2 projects that demonstrate the critical value of SCRI. First is research on biodegradable plastic fabric for mulches. WSU, with collaborators, studied mulch fabrics that suppress weeds and saves water and can be used also for high tunnels that prolong the growing season. This was only possible because of the research collaboration among 5 universities and farmers. In addition, the results allowed farmers from Washington, Tennessee, and Texas to access niche markets for strawberries and to improve yields of other crops such as tomatoes. Further, researchers collected valuable information that was previously unavailable. They first collected information on the performance of biodegradable plastic fabrics used to construct the tunnels and mulch covers. They also collected information on the effects of biodegradation of microbial communities in soil and identify fungi and bacteria responsible for degradation. This research led to a second project, now underway, focused on developing nonwoven polymers that can be used to manufacture fabrics that have high utility as biodegradable mulch. The second example I'll share is actually 2 projects that seek to improve the accessibility and application of the vast amounts of genomic data available for specialty crops. The data is valuable because it can be used to identify genes responsible for specific traits, and then by plant breeders to integrate these traits into varieties. The first project is the genomic database for Rosaceae, which is led by Dory Main. This is a publicly available database with whole genome sequences and genetics and breeding data for apples, peaches, and strawberries, and partial sequences and data for other crops such as almonds and pears that can be used for breeding projects. In addition to SCRI funding, this research is supported by several other sources, including the National Science Foundation and the Washington Tree Fruit Commission. In the other project, known as Rustbreed, scientists from WSU and Michigan State University are leading 35 scientists from 14 U.S. institutions to utilize information from 22 U.S. Rosaceae crop breeding programs. This initial project was so successful that a second phase was funded to develop and apply 21st century DNA tests and breeding methods to produce new varieties with improved horticultural quality and disease resistance. I've provided additional testimony for the record describing these examples and the importance of SCRI funding to Washington agriculture. I thank you for this opportunity to offer the testimony today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moyer. Dr. Brashier.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today about the importance of food safety research and the need for future funding in this area. I am a professor of food safety and public health at Texas Tech University, and I have spent my career studying this important topic. August 13th, 1997 was a very significant day in my life. Not only was it my first day on the job as an assistant professor at the University of Nebraska, it was also the day of the Hudson Foods ground beef 25 million pound recall due to E. coli 0157H7 contamination, which was at the time the largest recall in U.S. history. Hudson Foods was located in Columbus, Nebraska, and I was hired with an extension role to work directly with the industry and to field media requests. I remember being interviewed on that first day, and I tried to be reassuring, but really wondering, how can we ever solve this problem? On a day I expected to be unpacking boxes, I instead was thrown into the deep end of one of the biggest food safety crises in U.S. history. It turns out when you're thrown into the deep end, you can either sink or swim or be thrown a life preserver. A life preserver is what I was given in the form of strong research funding to develop innovative technologies to control this pathogen. Later, I transferred to Texas Tech University, which is in the heart of the cattle feeding industry. I partnered with other faculty to conduct several feeding studies to determine if a cattle probiotic I had developed controlled pathogens in the feedlot. To make a long story short, it did work. After several studies, we found that E. coli can be reduced up to 50% in live animals, thus reducing the risk of product contamination. This product has been commercialized and is used in many feed yards across the United States. Many other things happened in the beef industry to improve safety, including the implementation of HACCP and the use of antimicrobial interventions. I was able to set up a pathogen processing lab at Texas Tech where we developed and validated many interventions in simulated food processing environments. We formed a strong research team in the International Center for Food Industry Excellence, adding additional faculty and moving into new facilities. When you jump ahead to 2015, there is great news. Investment in food safety research in the past 20 years has saved lives. In the early 1990s, we were scrambling for solutions to control E. coli, but federal investment in translational research delivered effective controls. The FSIS testing shows that ground beef contamination has fallen more than 90%, and the CDC reports that the human incidence has been cut in half. However, the food safety problem is far from being solved. The incidence of salmonellosis remains steady, and illnesses associated with Campylobacter are actually rising. Antibiotic resistance actually decreases our ability to treat many of the illnesses associated with these pathogens. The availability of funds for food safety research has decreased, which leaves scientists scrambling for limited resources. Research at Texas Tech can address problems on both the pre- and post-harvest side of food processing. For example, recent data indicates that the probiotic that reduces E. coli in cattle also reduces salmonella in lymph nodes, which is a significant source of beef contamination. We have several studies underway studying the mechanisms associated with the emergence of antibiotic resistance. And finally, we have molecular scientists who study detection technologies so we can react to problems quickly. We are well poised and ready to meet emerging food safety challenges. Also of critical importance is a transfer of our knowledge to our stakeholders. We have engaged social scientists as a key part of our research team to study human behavior in the food plant environment in order to effectively implement useful technologies. I'm finding that more scientists like myself are engaging with social media to provide clarity to consumers. I personally have a site on social media, The Food Doctor, which can be found on Facebook, where I provide science-based information to the public. In summary, investments in research and education save lives. There's a need to address food safety issues in the U.S. and globally to improve the quality of life and to protect public health for our population. Funding is the key to develop new technologies to control emerging pathogens and to communicate science-based information to our final stakeholders. Thank you very much, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brashier. Dr. Heighthouse.
Thank you. Chairman Davis, Ranking Member Del Bene, members of the committee, especially our Florida friends, Congressman Yoho and Congresswoman Graham. It's an honor to be here to discuss some of the innovations advanced at Florida International University aimed at enhancing agricultural science and research nationwide. FIU is Miami's only public research university and is the fourth largest university in the country, enrolling 55,000 students and conducting over $130 million of research every year. And we see FIU as a national resource for agricultural research in the USDA, who hired 50 of our grads last year. Together with the state's land-grant institution, University of Florida, and Miami-Dade County's agricultural office led by Charles LaPrade, FIU is helping address three major agricultural crises in our service area, whose ag industry employs over 20,000 people and produces more than $2.7 billion in economic impact each year for the county. So these risks to our subtropical and tropical crops and ornamentals include exotic pests and disease like citrus greening and laurel wilt that are being introduced into the U.S. at alarming rates. They've cost Miami-Dade County billions of dollars in treatment, eradication programs, and lost revenue. Local weather patterns and climate are shifting and is going to affect the crops we can grow and threaten food security. This is compounded with the water management challenges to ensure that we balance the needs of urban, agricultural, and natural systems. Finally, agriculture is an industry with an aging workforce. We have to find ways to bring in more young people and to diversify. I'd like to share some thoughts on the unique ability of our country's Hispanic-serving agricultural colleges and universities, or HSACUs, of which there are 80 countrywide, to accelerate research and better complement the extension and teaching of our land grants. In many ways, the collaboration and complementary roles played by FIU and UF are a metaphor for the future collaboration with HSACUs and what it should look like. As we see in Miami-Dade County, these agricultural challenges are too important to leave to a single institution. As a testament to FIU's efforts, it was one of the first universities in the nation to receive USDA's HSACU designation. And although FIU faculty, staff, and students are helping to address the challenges I mentioned previously, federal partnerships and competitive funding are critical to ensuring that we maximize our impact. I'd like to highlight 4 of our impact areas. First, we're helping to develop more resilient crops. Our researchers are working with collaborators to develop new crop varieties like chickpeas, lentils, and mangoes that are more resilient to changes in climate. The wild relatives of our domesticated crops are better able to survive variation in growing condition like droughts or too much rainfall. But using cutting-edge genetic techniques, we can incorporate that hardiness of the wild relatives of the crops while maintaining the benefits of the domestic varieties. We're also helping to combat invasive pests. The aggressive Asian red bay ambrosia beetle has Florida's multi-million-dollar avocado industry in limbo. The insect spreads laurel wilt, which is deadly to avocado trees. And our researchers, led by our provost, Dr. Ken Furton, have developed a unique detection program called Detector Canines that couples drone technology and canine scent detection. And this is a really important approach because it holds promise for detecting emerging diseases before they become so widespread that the cost of combating them just become crippling to an industry. We're also working with the University of Florida to build an agribusiness incubator that'll help generate high-tech solutions and add value to raw agricultural products that'll help overcome food waste challenges while stimulating further economic activity. Finally, we're training the next generation of farmers, particularly from underrepresented groups. The FIU Agroecology program with its partners has trained hundreds of students and developed a veteran and small farmer training program. So what's the future of our nation's Hispanic serving institutions in agriculture? Congress and USDA have made important strides to engage with the greater Hispanic serving community, and particularly the heavy lift by the National Institute on Food and Agriculture and several of its leaders like Director Ramaswamy and Drs. Qureshi and Lawrence. There are lots of examples with direct impact, but there are two thoughts on specific policy challenges. First, we have to build capacity at HSIs through the SACU programs. Post-secondary Hispanic students are now enrolled mostly at HSIs, with over 60% of Hispanics nationwide at these institutions. Hispanics represent 50% of all farm laborers and supervisors, but only 3% of doctoral recipients in the biological, agricultural, and life sciences. So we're leaving a ton of talent untapped, and we have not funded any of the programs authorized in 2008 for the HSACU. Second, we need to incorporate the Hispanic serving institutions into the land grant ecosystem. As UF and FIU have proven, collaboration between a land grant and an HSI is a win for all involved. We need much more such collaborations around the country and ways to incentivize better collaboration. There's tremendous opportunity in the future, and FIU looks forward to working with Congress and the USDA to accelerate agricultural research, extension, and teaching. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Heighthouse. Dr. Lacy.
Chairman Davis, Ranking Member Del Bene, distinguished committee members, I'm grateful for the opportunity to represent the University of Georgia College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences and all land-grant universities across the nation to talk about the intrinsic value and vital role public university research plays in keeping American agriculture strong, our economy growing, and the world adequately nourished. I want to specifically thank Congressman Austin Scott, one of the University of Georgia's most distinguished alumni, for his support. He's a tremendous advocate for agriculture. All agricultural research is important. However, in this brief testimony, it'll be best for me to focus on my area of expertise, poultry science. Nowhere else is agricultural research so open and readily accessible to farmers and consumers as it is in the United States. This unique quest for and application of new information relevant to agriculture is directly attributable to our land-grant university system. The land-grant model, coupled with USDA ARS, form a powerful combination that is the envy of the world in its effectiveness at addressing the critical needs of food production. A great example of that land-grant USDA collaboration can be seen in UGA and USDA efforts to address the threat of avian influenza. Earlier this year, the U.S. faced a renewed threat to our food security as AI spread through 21 western and central states, resulting in the loss of over 50 million birds, including 16% of the nation's egg-producing flocks. As waterfowl that carry the AI virus migrate south this fall, the threat of this disease intensifies. Because of the sheer size of the poultry industry in Georgia, a serious outbreak in our state would be devastating to our economy and would impact the entire U.S. food supply. We've been conducting intensive programs to help producers strengthen biosecurity procedures to protect their poultry flocks. Our scientists have worked tirelessly on research related to response plans, humane euthanasia methods, composting mass mortalities in the event of a catastrophic AI outbreak. The USDA Southeast Poultry Research Laboratory in Athens, Georgia, is recognized as one of the leading poultry disease research facilities in the world. The work done there is of immeasurable importance to the health of the nation's poultry flocks. The need for funding recommended to expand the research facilities at SEPRL is strategic and vital, as the serious consequences of the current AI situation vividly highlight. In concert with the biosecurity efforts focused on poultry producers, UGA 4-H is piloting a program with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to teach biosecurity principles to even our youngest citizens, helping them better understand and prevent disease transmission. Continuing this poultry health theme, interest in minimizing the use of pharmaceuticals has spurred research at UGA on novel ways to protect poultry from diseases such as coccidiosis. Non-disease-causing variants of the protozoa that cause this disease have been isolated that allow poultry to develop resistance without contracting the actual disease. These variants have been employed to produce an effective vaccine now used extensively by poultry producers. Ag engineers and poultry scientists at UGA teamed up to address the serious problem of heat stress in fast-growing meat-type chickens. This work resulted in the development of ventilation and cooling systems, which have eliminated both heat-related mortality and stunted growth during the hot summer months. I could list scores and scores of additional research projects that have had significant impact in poultry genetics, nutrition, food safety, etc. But in the final minute I have, allow me to call attention to the recent National Academy of Science report titled "The Critical Role of Animal Science Research in Food Security and Sustainability." This report details the important accomplishments of animal agriculture research and documents the alarmingly small amount of USDA funding focused on animal agriculture relative to its economic importance and future expectations. As this report concludes, the need for additional investment in animal agriculture research is critical. I do wish to thank the committee for authorizing the extension of the Animal Health Research and Disease Section 1433 program. Full funding of the 1433 program is still needed. A well-thought-out research blueprint has been established. The animal agriculture research community and industry counterparts came together in 2012 and identified research priorities which were published in the Farm Animal Integrated Research Report, FAIR 2012. We're prepared to meet the challenges facing the future of animal agriculture when research funding is available. Again, I sincerely thank the committee for your interest in and support of agriculture research. That support is never taken for granted. Thank you for the foresight you have in regard to providing the investment required to make the advancements needed to assure food security for a growing global population.
Thank you, Dr. Lacy. We still respect the University of Georgia in spite of the fact you reminded us all that our colleague, Mr. Scott, graduated from there.
Go Dogs.
Dr. Buehler, please.
Well, thank you. Chairman Davis, Ranking Member Del Bene, Congressman Molinar, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and represent the hardworking research scientists and extension professionals at Michigan State University. One of the benefits of going last is I can start out by saying I want to concur with all of the comments that have been made by the previous speakers. The critical nature of what we do has always been important to this country and the world, but I believe it's more important now than it's ever been as we look at the challenges of feeding a growing world with the challenges that we face in terms of protecting our natural resources, et cetera. Michigan State University is very, very fortunate to have very strong support from the state of Michigan and industry partners. That support is very important because it allows us to leverage the federal investment in our research and outreach programs, and so I wanted to acknowledge that. Founded in 1855, Michigan State University was the first agricultural college of its kind in the country. It was actually founded as it was called the Michigan Agriculture College. So we have very strong roots in agriculture, and if you look at the history of the institution, it's a very interesting history of starting from a state-based regional agricultural college and growing into a world-class university, really starting and through the end of World War II to the present. Michigan is also a very heavily specialty crop state. And when you look at Michigan and you look at our geography, a lot of the places where we grow crops are very unique. And so when we talk about the importance of the federal investment and the state investment in protecting our specialty crops, it's very critical because many of these crops depend on the university for support. These crops are very important locally, but they're not major crops on a national scale. And so you look at things like tart cherries, asparagus, things like that. They grow in a very unique environment. And so if the university is not there to support these industries, there's not a lot of backup. And it's really important that we continue to support the public sector research and outreach to support these important commodities. I also want to point out that a lot of the work that we do is often difficult to quantify, because a lot of it is protecting productivity as opposed to really generating new outputs. And what I'm particularly talking about here is pest management. We make a great deal of investments to protect the inherent productivity of our crops, and that's something that I think we really need to keep in mind as we look forward, because a huge part of what we do, whether it's in the animal industries or the crop industries, is protecting the productivity that we have inherent in our genetics and in our environments where we grow our crops. So Michigan State University, as I said, is really rooted in agriculture. Many of the early pioneers at our institution were involved in things like helping to develop hybrid corn, some of the early plant breeding programs. Plant breeding and genetics continues to be a core of what we do, particularly in the specialty crops. For example, our edible dry bean program has been producing a new variety that's been released into the industry at a rate of at least one per year over the last 20 years. We've also been very involved in processing, particularly in the dairy industry, and we will continue to work in those areas. An area that I want to make a little bit of a point on, and I think is really critical as we move forward, is that we look at the issues that are facing us in the future. They're very complex problems. And as we look at how do we attack some of these big problems, like antimicrobial resistance, which has been mentioned, some of the weather issues, and others, climate and so on, some of the water issues, we really need to draw a broader range of scientists into our agricultural fields. We really need to bring in fundamental plant science, fundamental ecology, and things like that, and build teams that can address these issues in a multidisciplinary way. This often requires different funding, and it often requires and would be very much improved if we could provide more opportunities to work across federal agencies, particularly NIH and NSF, to bolster some of our agricultural investments. And so we really look forward to continuing to build some of these programs, because we think that's really critical to moving forward in the future. So I just want to wrap up by just making a point about the importance of the agricultural infrastructure and the work and the facilities that we need simply to do our research. Agriculture in many cases is a little bit different than many of the other areas of science, that we need long-term investments in things like animal herds, plant breeding programs, vineyards and orchards to just give us the basic capacity to do our work. And that's really where, when you talk about why is agriculture different than other areas of science, I believe that's where that is rooted. We have to have these facilities available, often taking 20, 30, maybe even 50 years to build that capacity so that we can actually do our research. And so when I'm asked why should agriculture have this more unique investment, that's the reason that I cite. So thank you again for this opportunity, and we really appreciate your support, and we look forward to moving forward and addressing these important issues of our country and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Buehler. I'm going to follow a practice that's become standard in this hearing room. I'm going to ask one question, and then I can get back to my follow-up question so that we can get to my fellow members that much more quickly. My question, obviously, is for Dr. Hauser. Thanks again for coming in from Champaign-Urbana. According to the U.S. Census, the average age of a farmer is 58, despite large participation and positive experiences in programs like 4-H, and it just seems the passion for ag begins to dip as kids grow older. Why do you think that is, and why aren't there more young people choosing ag as a profession?
Well, fewer and fewer students come from the farm. The demographics are clearly in that direction. But what isn't recognized, even regardless of where they come from, is the breadth of what we have to offer in colleges that are represented here. We're talking about food production and feeding the world. That's much more than cows and plows and the things that the kids, quote unquote, tend to think about these days when they think about programs. That's particularly related, and I'll be brief here, to crop sciences, the focus of my remarks. There's just not that much that's sexy about crops and plants and things that involves until they get there and they learn, oh, there's jobs, okay? And as soon as they start learning there are jobs is when we start seeing transfers come in and get those seats filled.
So they may be going less to the farms and more to the agribusiness sector.
Agribusiness, processing, distribution, trade, policy.
I got one quick follow-up question before I turn it over to the ranking member. When Congress created NIFA, the clear construction and intent was for an independent scientific policy setting agency for the food and ag sciences sector. Do you believe this intent, Dr. Hauser, has been achieved?
It has been achieved. We continue to do the scholarship that legislation had in mind when it was created. I think that the difference is that we now do it in much more of a partnership than we did when it began.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hauser. I'll yield back, and I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all of you for your testimony. Dr. Moyer, you mentioned gathering genomic data and gene sequencing and how critical that was, and I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more about really why this information is so important and what it's used for.
Well, I think the plant genome is foundational to all of the information that makes up a variety, a productive variety. And we know that the pressures that are coming, that are being placed on our agricultural production, particularly as we look forward in the demands between now and 2050, we're going to have to produce more abundant yields than we ever have before. For rapid advances, we have to have the technology to identify the specific genes in the genome that are responsible for the traits that we are breeding for, and then we have to have the efficient tools to use that information in order to rapidly integrate and reduce the time that it takes to make a variety that's adopted by the farmers.
And then you also talked about the research being done on biodegradable plastic fabric, and that it led to a second project on non-woven polymers to help manufacture biodegradable mulch. Do you find regularly that one project leads to another, and that's how research builds on itself?
Yes, I think it's extremely important. It's I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's certainly a hallmark of a successful project when it receives a second round of funding. It shows the success. It's why, and I think maybe it's even a measure of success of the SCRI program, bringing together teams that are in fact actually contributing to the solutions of complex problems. And so that second, like I said, it's a winnowing process, but getting that second round of funding is a hallmark of something that really is truly having impact. And also, this is just not peer-reviewed, but in order to get the callback from a pre-proposal, it undergoes stakeholder review. So this is a two-tiered process. The rigor is the bar is pretty high, and yes, that's a very positive sign.
Thank you. This is a question for all of you. There have been multiple studies that have looked at the need for more agricultural research funding or making changes in how we actually fund agricultural research. And as someone on the front lines, what are your experiences in addressing the funding question, as well as the best type of funding mechanism for competitive awards? And by funding mechanisms, I'm referring to whether collaborative, long-term, larger grant funding is the way to go, or if given the amount of ag research funding, whether smaller grants, whether smaller grants might be helpful, not just focused on multi-institution work. What do you think is the best bet, or what feedback would you give all of us on how to best structure funding? And anyone who wants to respond.
I'll jump in, coming from a somewhat unique position of being a non-land grant institution, and I think the answer is a mix. I think that having these large multi-institution grants are very beneficial, especially long-term as we're facing changing conditions, and we really need to be projecting what the needs are going to be 5 or 10 years from now, rather than reacting to what worked best last year. And I think that the collaborative grants do allow us to bring expertise from multiple institutions and help catalyze that collaboration that I think would help bring in expertise from outside the traditional land grants while really teaming it up. But I think that you do still need those mix of the small, more targeted grants that don't require collaboration as well, because so many of these challenges are very local, and you don't want to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater on that.
May I speak on behalf of my friend from Michigan State?
I guess that's a question for him.
He made the point at the end of his remarks, which is an excellent one, and that is agricultural research often involves very land-intensive, capital-intensive infrastructures that have to be maintained regardless of what kind of projects you're doing. It's like farming. You have to have land, you have to have capital, you have to have equipment, regardless of what you're doing. And that, for us, is often the most challenging part of maintaining the operation that we need to do the scholarship that's expected of us. And so it's a combination of competitive grant, run in the right way, plus the ability to be at the right capacity level.
Thank you. My time's expired. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member Del Bene. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Lacy, I'll be stepping out after my questions because I have an Armed Services Committee as well at the same time. But I do want to thank you for being here, and I appreciate your kind comments. My professors might take issue with them back at the University of Georgia. But we are the leading producer of poultry in the U.S., and as you testified in your opening statement, a serious outbreak of avian influenza would be devastating to our state's economy and especially to certain regions of our state and our food supply. This avian influenza has been around a long time. It's something that we're just now seem to be coming to grips with, that it is here in our country and a major risk for us. Can you explain in more details the work that you're doing to help the producers, to help protect the poultry flocks from avian influenza, and what other potential diseases are there that we see in other countries that have not yet made it to America?
Thank you. That avian influenza is a disease that's been around. I think it was identified in the early 1900s, and we have had outbreaks of avian influenza in the United States. I remember in Virginia, Pennsylvania in the 1980s, and Texas a few years ago. But our industry is so sophisticated and so on top of being able to diagnose avian influenza that we're able to stamp it out quickly in the past. This particular year, we weren't able to stamp it out as we have in the past. It caught us by surprise. So our efforts have been to educate growers, to educate the industry on the seriousness of the present situation, and to redouble our biosecurity efforts to try to keep the virus from entering the commercial chicken houses, commercial chicken production. Other diseases that cause us problems in poultry production are actually mostly respiratory diseases, as avian influenza is. Infectious bronchitis, laryngotracheitis. Those are two in particular diseases. Those we can control by vaccine. Avian influenza, because of trade implications, we've chosen not to vaccinate for avian influenza in the United States.
What is the difference this year and in prior years? Why did it get ahead of us this year instead of us controlling it the way we had in the past?
Another really good question, and again, the importance of that Southeast Poultry Research Laboratory in Athens, Georgia. They have been able to determine that this particular variant of the avian influenza virus is different than what we have encountered before. Like the human flu virus, it is a flu virus. It changes each year. So this particular strain of high-path avian influenza is unusual. It is definitely more of a problem in our turkey and layer flocks than what we have experienced before. And I think that coupled with the fact that we haven't had an avian influenza outbreak in some time, again, caught us a little bit by surprise.
Have you been able to partner with the ARS facilities and other universities on this, or could you speak to potentially CDC and other government agencies and how you're able to coordinate and work together?
We are, it's amazing in Georgia, and I can't speak for other states, but I think the response there has been similar. The response of all state agencies, USDA, CDC, in our state, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Agriculture, Environmental Protection, all of those agencies have come together, FEMA, come together to plan for a worst-case scenario that we hope never happens. But the amount and the effectiveness of that state and federal collaboration has been amazing.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here, and Mr. Chairman, this just reemphasizes the value of not only research in agriculture, but extension that protects the food supply of the United States, and quite honestly, the largest food supply in the world. So thank you all for what you do. I certainly appreciate you being here, and hope to see you in Athens.
Thank you to my colleague from Georgia, and I also want to give him a thanks because he is my predecessor in this chair for this subcommittee and did a great job during the last Congress too, so thank you. I tried to avoid the next questioner by going to Mr. Peterson, but Jim, he didn't have any questions, so I am going to you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I really don't have any questions either, other than to say thank you to the panel. I think it's really important that you're here and talking about the incredible research that you're all doing, because I think for a lot of members of Congress, especially those who are not on this committee, they don't quite make the connection between our agricultural colleges and universities and what they contribute in terms of agriculture, but in terms of business and in terms of the economy. So I think it's so I appreciate you being here. You know, I've seen firsthand how important our land-grant universities are and the incredible work they're doing. I'm proud to represent the flagship campus of the 5-campus University of Massachusetts system, the UMass Amherst in Amherst, Massachusetts. And and over the years, UMass has expanded into a major research university that covers many of the many areas of research and education, including cutting-edge research and advanced materials and manufacturing, applied life sciences and health data science, and security, and many other important fields, driving economic growth in Massachusetts and across the country. But through all that transformation, the school has never forgotten its proud history and roots as an agricultural institution. And I have seen firsthand some of the most innovative and exciting projects revolve around agriculture. And I think some of you pointed out that some of what you do is unique to the states and the areas that you live in. In Massachusetts, I've seen this incredible cutting-edge research on cranberries out of UMass. But what's equally exciting to me is the work that they're doing to help not only protect our food here in the United States, but help find ways to feed the hungry around the world, and to deal with plant diseases and animal diseases and all the kinds of stuff that oftentimes result in catastrophes. So, I'm just here to say thank you. I support our investment in all of you, and I think it's important that we brag about it a little bit more, because I'm not always sure that people get it. You know, when you think of agriculture, oftentimes people don't automatically think of colleges and universities. They think of people working on a farm. But I have, like I said, I've seen firsthand in my own state, and you have all talked about it here today, unbelievable research. It's worth every penny, and it's cost effective, and you've saved lives in the process too. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. You're back.
Thank you, and I echo the comments from my colleague, Mr. McGovern, and thank you for those comments too. Mr. Molinar, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to thank all of you as panelists for being here, and especially appreciate Dr. Buehler from Michigan State University. We're very proud of Michigan State, and I wanted to just direct some of my questions to you, if that's all right, and then maybe have one question for the entire group. But first of all, thank you for testifying, and Michigan State has really played a lead role in our country, and especially in our state, in agricultural research. And I had a few questions for you based on the understanding I have, and these are kind of technical questions, but one of the questions would be on the Hatch Act requiring dollar-for-dollar matching funds from state appropriations. Also requires each state to use 25% of its Hatch Act funds to support multi-state or regional research. Do you believe those percentages should be modified at all, or is that the right approach?
Well, I think I'm very comfortable with the percentages as they stand, because I think one of the things that we need to do, and we are doing much more effectively, is working across state boundaries. One of the probably the positive impacts that we've had in recent years over some of our tough budget times has really driven us to speak more seriously about how we work across state lines, how do we move information back and forth. So I think the requirement to use a sizable portion of the money that way, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really on the backs of people like us to make sure that we're working with each other. As a matter of fact, the meeting that I left and I'm going back to is our annual meeting of the directors of research at the land-grant universities, and one of the things that we do at that meeting is talk about how we can more effectively collaborate. So I believe that continuing to put an emphasis on the collaboration, and you heard many examples here of how we already work with each other, we need to do more of that.
And then in your comments, you also mentioned working across agencies. Could you speak to that a bit more also?
Yes, I believe that we're quite fortunate in Michigan is that we have very good relationships with our Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, for example, the Department of Environmental Quality, as well as the Department of Natural Resources. And so we have very good interactions there. We also have many very strong commodity groups that we interact with very closely. Many of those groups have their own research funding programs that we work with collaboratively. Actually, most of those programs are actually administered through my office, and so we provide that assistance to those groups. We also have a state-funded program called Project Green, which was specifically a grassroots program that provides funding annually for mostly applied research, but support of the plant agriculture industries of Michigan. And it's very much integral with the commodity groups. They sit on our review panels, they provide priorities every year, and it's been a very, very successful program, and I think it's a very, very good example of how universities and industries and state government can work together in an effective manner.
Along those lines, USDA recently began implementing a two-stage review process for competitive grants that relevancy is considered under that, as well as peer review. Do you think this emphasis on relevancy can improve the producer support for these programs?
I very much believe that it can, and I really come from the experience that I just referenced in terms of working with this Project Green program. The fact that we have the producers at the table in every stage of the process, and they're actually there in the room and understand the interaction of their priorities with strong science and balancing all of the different priorities of all of the different industries is really critical. So I think it's really important, maybe more how it's done. I'm more in favor of maybe a kind of an integrated program where everybody's kind of reviewing things together so that the science and the relevancy are reviewed together. But bottom line is I think I support it, particularly as it relates to programs that relate to applied research and then moving that results into the grower community.
Okay. And then just to ask you a little bit about cooperative extension, improving communications to constituents report involving our food supply. One of the things I wanted to ask all of you is just, as we did this GMO labeling bill, it was clear to me that a lot of the advances in biotechnology are being viewed with fear or suspicion. And I just wonder what your university's role or cooperative extension might play in that.
Well, just real quickly, we are working very hard to try to get our arms around that. I think there's a lot of, for me personally, I think we've really gotten a confusion of the technology of genetic modification with some of the discomfort with some of the specific products that have come from that. And I think we've really got to figure out how we help people understand. We're talking about new ways of doing it because we don't feel that good that we're being effective with where we are. So I think we've got to step back and be honest with ourselves and relook at some of the things we're trying to do.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I know we're out of time. I don't know if any of the others wanted to comment on that topic or if you have additional questions.
Let's get to some of the other members, and we can go back to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yoho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you all being here, and Dr. Heighthouse, appreciate you being a fellow Floridian and doing the research you guys do. Working off Congressman Molinar here, aside from the communications that the success of ag research, how do you believe we can help elevate the importance of ag research? You guys are doing incredible research. I mean, it's phenomenal. You know, I look at what we've done in Florida, like on the papaya ring spot virus that was done over 10 years ago, but yet we haven't been able to market it because of the threat of GMO. And, you know, to do the research is great, but if we can't market that, I'd like to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on how we can do that better? Because we're constantly being bombarded, and there's a lot of false science out there and a lot of just fear. And, of course, there's people that are fueling that, and it's crippling the end use of what you guys have created. So I'll start with you, Dr. Heighthouse.
Well, I think that the first thing is that, unfortunately, a lot of scientists like to put their head down, do the work, and get the satisfaction of knowing that they've helped the industry and helped solve a problem. And we need to be very intentional about how we market and communicate about these issues. I think that it's really important that we do this. In South Florida, a lot of people don't know how important ag is even as an industry. I mean, they just think of beaches and tourists, but the ag industry is critical to the success of South Florida and is really important nationwide. So I think that we need to be very intentional and targeted in how we talk to not just the local agricultural community, but the wider consumer community about what we're doing. And as we build this agribusiness incubator with the University of Florida, one of the components that we're going to be working to train community members in and farmers that work there is in the marketing of their products. And, you know, how do we talk about this specifically?
Dr. Moyer, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes. I think one of the things that we really need to do, and I think one of the things we've learned from the GMO situation that has now been going on for over 25 years, is that the importance of involving the social scientists in the integration of new technology. And I think the push on, or the suggestion, strong suggestion in many of these grants of having that multidisciplinary team and involving the social scientist in the project, and then conducting those studies that will hopefully anticipate some of the problems that might arise and thereby facilitate the integration of new technologies. And I think that's something that we have to do.
I agree, and I think it needs to be a concerted effort that when a new product comes out, we need to blast that throughout the media and not have a television personality coming out saying, oh, this is bad, and, you know, and it just starts. Dr. Hauser?
So that raises an interesting communication issue. You know, the emotion associated with biotech and a lot of things in agriculture is communicated how? It's mostly through social media. So while it's good to get social scientists involved, and I'm one of those, I'm glad to hear that suggested, it's also good to start thinking about how we communicate, and we're not very good in academia of getting it out into the form that people are paying attention to.
Well, and you bring up a good point there, because last week we had a discussion on the Freedom of Information Act, how these researchers are doing the research, and then these groups are going after them, making them look like, you know, the devil in not even in disguise, and they're squashing the researchers want to go out and do that. Let me move on to something else. Dr. Lacy, you were talking about the vaccines that we're not using for avian influenza. I'm a veterinarian by trade, been around ag since pretty much my whole life. Are you guys doing anything in conjunction with NIH about the avian influenza, or not the avian influenza, but the DNA recombinant vaccines that are multivalent? They're using a fraction of the inside cell coat of glycoprotein to produce that. Are we working on that with the avian species?
There are veterinarians that are working on that. The issue with trade is that if you vaccinate a chicken for avian influenza, you can't really tell whether they had the disease,
if they're a carrier or not.
Just have the antibodies from the vaccine. So there is work going on to try to be able to show that, okay, this chicken is protected from avian influenza, but it's not because it had avian influenza.
Okay, and Dr. Brashier, I just wanted to give you a shout out for your great research on probiotics. I mean, it's changed the whole industry, and I commend you for doing that, especially cutting down the E. coli. I think the incidence was 90% in humans. It dropped it down to about half as far as the infection. So I thank you for your research, and if the chairman will let you respond, that'd be great. Nothing like being put on the spot. And if not, I'm sure he will later.
Go ahead, make it quick. I will.
Okay.
I'll take it out of Mr. Newhouse's time.
Okay, great. Yes, well, thank you. We have invested quite a bit in developing the cattle probiotic, and like I said, we have found that it does reduce E. coli in cattle by up to 50%, which obviously doesn't eliminate it, but through the food processing system, it's an elimination or reduction of risk from each step. And that's the importance of taking a farm-to-table approach, whether it be with an animal product or a fruit and vegetable product. Every segment of the industry counts with regard to reducing the risk all the way down to the consumer. And we have to get that information to the consumer so that they know how to properly handle foods and to ensure public health. But thank you, we have done a lot of work in that. Like I said, it's commercialized, and we're very happy with the outcome of that research.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Brashier. My colleague, Mr. Yoho, takes advantage of our niceness all the time. No problem, Ted. And Mr. Newhouse is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate having Mr. Yoho in my debt for over 1 minute. Let the record show. But thank you very much for having this hearing. I want to welcome Dr. Moyer in his participation here today. As a WSU alumnus myself, I have a soft spot for Washington State University and really appreciate your being here to participate today. Some of the, I don't know if you even know this, but some of the research that's happening at WSU is there's a small project on my own farm where Dr. Michelle Moyer, and I don't think any relation, and her research team, part of which is my own daughter, Jensina, is working on some wine grape projects on our own farm. So very much personally and aware of what's the importance of ag research. As the former Director of Agriculture for the state of Washington, also very happy to have been a great partner, our agency, and as Washington State University. And so appreciate everything that you do. All of our representatives here from research universities around the country. I don't understand why the line isn't out the door this morning to listen to some of the exciting things that are happening in agricultural research. Every one of us as Americans, as citizens of the world, are a part of agriculture at least 3 times a day, and this is very exciting and important stuff that we're working on. Dr. Moyer, you talked a little bit about the specialty crop program, and I just wanted to, I helped administer that, was responsible for making sure that projects that were worthy were selected and important enough to get the funding. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an opportunity to elaborate on the importance of that, maybe help explain to some of my colleagues who may not be as informed on what the specialty crop program does and can do.
Well, first of all, the Specialty Crops Research Initiative is a relatively recent addition to the Farm Bill, and it targets those crops that may have been or were underserved. I think a lot of the research, the federally funded research, was at either at the very basic pioneering discovery end of the spectrum, or it tended to focus on the big 3, wheat, corn, soybeans. And there was this whole body of other crops that were languishing because there was not a vehicle to get that pioneering research into practice. And so with the Specialty Crops Research Initiative, it really fills a unique void. It's that gap, some called it the valley of death, between pioneering research and the day-to-day real-world immediate needs of the commodity groups we're funding. And so to get new innovations into practice, there needed to be a vehicle. And I think the insight then to get this done was a very high level of involvement from the stakeholders, as well as targeting these groups. And the groups were really to do exactly what I described, because it took these teams to really tackle the complex problems. It's a unique program, and it's great.
Well, thank you. I agree. It's very, very important. It has been very significant in some of the things that have resulted from that. Could you also help us understand the National Clean Plant
Yes.
Network?
The National Clean Plant Network, also relatively new, is a it's part of the effort to make germplasm available to growers, users. It's a program that facilitates the storage. It's like a germplasm repository for cultivars. There are several centers around the nation, Cornell, Davis, at Washington State. They each have responsibilities for specific crops. Again, they're vegetatively propagated crops as opposed to seed crops. Again, this was a void. There really wasn't federal funding to support vegetatively propagated crops. And so they provide the grower with pathogen-tested, true-to-type varieties that they can rely on. They know that the variety is what they say it is, and that it is void of harmful pests. And so this is a national network. And again, these vegetatively propagated crops tend to be specialty crops.
Very important part of the economic fabric of agriculture.
Extremely critical.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and again, thank all of you this morning for being here with us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, now Yoho only owes you 20 seconds. Okay. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks to all of you on the panel. It's a very important topic. You know, the research that you do, our universities do. I have to do a shout out to my university where I graduated, Penn State University, their agricultural sciences. What you all do is about national security. I would say it's one of the #1 important things we have for our national security, but it's also about combating hunger. And so my first, Dr. Brashier's, is there an estimate in terms of the work from biotechnology of essentially, I mean, just cut to the quick, how many lives that have been, how many people have been prevented from starvation because of the result of biotechnology being applied in agriculture? Are there any estimates at all?
I don't have an exact number of how many lives have been saved, but we do know that biotechnology does save lives. It increases our ability to produce crops in more abundance in certain environments where in the past we could not have done that because of the resistance to disease. It allows us to feed animals and provide protein to the different groups of people that need it. So the number of lives saved is tremendous. As you know, this week there were some new goals set forth of zero hunger, zero poverty over the next several years. And do I believe that that's achievable? Yes, because I don't think that you should set a goal, or I think you should set your goals very high, and that you can do things to achieve it, and that can be done through research. We do have the issue of dealing with public perception and getting that knowledge to the individual who doesn't understand science. And I'm guilty as well of looking at the consumer and thinking, well, here's the data How come they don't believe that? But this involves engaging our social scientists and understanding what motivates them to make that decision. And it becomes more of understanding the knowledge and having it, and understanding that person as an individual and what motivates them to make those decisions. It becomes a part of their belief system. And we're gaining more information on that through research on vaccines and why people choose to vaccinate their children or not. One of the classic examples we use is raw milk. People perceive that raw milk is healthier, but it can contain deadly pathogens. If you feed it to your children, they can get sick and even die. And that is the bottom line. Getting that message out becomes difficult because parents think I'm doing something healthy, something better for my children, and which piece of scientific information do I believe? So yes, biotechnology saves lives. We need to continue to develop technologies to improve crop production, animal production around the world in order to achieve these new goals of zero hunger, zero poverty around the globe.
Very good. The rest of the panelists, is there any research that have made an attempt to quantify kind of a ballpark of lives impacted by technology anybody that's aware of?
I'm not aware of any. There should be if there's not. But in addition to saving lives, one of the great things about genetically modified organisms and biotechnology is the decreased impact that we've had on the environment. In order to reduce the amount of pesticides used, the amount of water, fertilizer inputs, that type of thing. I mean, that is just huge. I guess to me, we ought to label everything as genetically modified because everything has been genetically modified since the first time we planted a corn kernel or a wheat kernel. We've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. I would argue that we actually know more about what we're modifying now than we did previously, which should be a positive thing from a safety standpoint.
I'm going to run out of time on this, but one of the things, Dr. Brashier's come back, how do you get the outcomes, your findings, how does that get disseminated into research so that the end users, the consumers, the producers, the processors can actually use that information?
We take multiple approaches. A lot of our work is directly applicable to the food industry. So we work through our commodity groups such as AMI or now NAMI and NCBA. They have been very supportive of our work, and they can help us reach our stakeholders either through workshops that we can do at Texas Tech or on site for different companies or organizations or even cattle producers. So workshops, our website, social media. As I said, I have a social media page where I try to convey information to producers as well as consumers. So we utilize these different resources we have in order to get our research results to the public, and we work with our communications group to put those messages, to tailor those in a way where they understand. So we're not too scientific and going over their heads where we're going to turn them off, to make the message appealing to the general population and our stakeholders.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the panel. Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate you charging any overtime I have to Mr. Yoho.
Gladly. Done. Hey, actually, I want to thank the ranking member, Ms. Del Bene, too. Traditionally, we go back and forth, but she wanted to make sure everybody here on our side that was still here got a chance to ask questions in case they had another hearing to go to. And because of that, I want to say thank you, and I'm going to recognize you for 5 minutes for follow-up questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just actually had one brief or general question for all of you, which is the impact from the recent Farm Bill on funding for your institutions and for the work you're doing. Any feedback that you have for us, positive and negative, on how that's gone so far? And anyone? Dr. Moyer?
If nobody, I guess I would say that we're very pleased that the Especially Crop Research Initiative was reauthorized with the new Farm Bill. That was very, very critical, and I see a nod down there because I believe Washington State Michigan State and University of Florida, I think, have probably gotten more money than anybody else. So for us, it really is a good complement to some of our state funding, and so we really appreciate that because that has really been an important tool for us to advance our specialty crop work. So we're very thankful for that.
Thank you.
Yes, 80% of our federal funding in our college comes from USDA. So having the Farm Bill refunded, we're very, and those are competitive funds. So we're highly dependent on our agricultural and natural resource research on the funding that's authorized by the Farm Bill.
Any other feedback? Dr. Lacy, I see you trying to turn on the microphone.
Didn't want to jump in too quickly. We are very grateful to the support that the Ag Committee has given to research through formula funds and through competitive research. And I mentioned the 1433, the Section 1433 funding. We were really grateful that was authorized at $5 million. We were hoping that it may be, if there were more research funds available in the future, that might jump up to $10 million in the future. And there's a formula there where a certain percentage of that goes to formula funds and the rest goes to competitive funds. That would be a huge help to that shortfall in animal agriculture research.
Just one particular, like the others, we were grateful for what was the general outcome for research, but the Farm Bill also allowed us to take the lead on educating producers about the new Farm Bill and the new policies, and that was a huge success. Translating the Farm Bill is often a challenge, to say the least, and with Congressman Davis's help, we were able to get a structure and a process set up to very much do that across, in our case, across the Midwest.
And I'd say there are lots of successes in there. I mean, as you've heard, the return on investment in research is really high. So what we see in South Florida is a general need for greater investment in research. Also, I'd just kind of like to echo that comment that the Hispanic-serving agricultural colleges and universities have multiple programs that were authorized but haven't been funded. So funding those would certainly help us maximize our impact and add to what's going on in the land grant institutions.
No, great, thank you very much. And I'll also say having that long-term visibility, I know, is critically important, because when we, making sure that Farm Bill is in place and that we have it for multiple years so you can plan and researchers know those researchers are going to be available, I know is very, very critical. You can't start and stop research very easily. And so that's something else I know is important for all of us to keep in mind for you to be able to do that great work. So thank you again, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
She yielded back time, Ted. Wow. No, thank you, Susan. I'm going to, since we're starting our second round of questions, I'm going to go ahead and go. I had one for you, Dr. Heighthouse, in regards to the Hispanic-serving ag colleges and universities. The establishment of the capacity grant program, when first authorized, the number of institutions qualifying was expected to be relatively low. That number has increased dramatically so that now approximately 100 institutions would divide the funding. Should the eligibility criteria be amended so that funding, if appropriated, would have a significant impact on the institutions that receive it?
Well, I think that, at the base level, yes, funding this, and even if it has to be divided many ways, it would have an impact. A lot of our universities are very used to making very efficient use of funds, and so it would have a real impact. However, the designation level for what qualifies might be something that we need to create a new funding mechanism or multiple criteria so that the allocation of those funds is done in such a way that it will maximize its impact in terms of the areas where there's the greatest need. But there certainly is that need for capacity funding, and there are also some of the unintended consequences of this designation where we can't qualify for certain non-land grant funding unless we give up that designation. So I think that we do need to do some tweaking on it to make sure that these universities are able to access funding and that it's allocated in a mix of competitive grants and then capacity building funding.
Great, thank you, Dr. Heighthouse. Dr. Hauser, you mentioned that you had to cut budgets at 4 research centers recently. Can you expand on that a little bit as to why and what you did?
It's related to a point that I made about capacity funding and that Doug made as well. Facilities such as that require a lot of investment. They're fixed costs, and so competitive grants do not help to recoup those costs. As funding has gone down at the state level, for us in particular, we've had to reduce expenditures and reduce expenditures and reduce expenditures over the last 5 to 10 years, actually. We have not gotten to that point where we're actually taking away research farm capacity until now, but now we're here. And it's unfortunate, but it also, I think, speaks to, again, the need that we've heard several times today expressed, which is a capacity and an infrastructure that has to really be emphasized when you're thinking about research in the food and agricultural area.
Thank you. And you also emphasize the importance of partnerships with the private sector in doing crop research. When is that appropriate?
Wow, that's a question that could be take the rest of the afternoon, but
we'll charge Mr. Yoho.
There's a lot of gaps, if you will, in the private research arena that can be addressed by the public and by research institutions represented here, whether it relates to market incentives such as profits in the short run that they're dealing with, whether it relates to public goods. There's lots of partnerships, and 20 to 30% of our research portfolio in my college is in partnership with corporations in the private sector. And it's very, very useful as long as you can be extremely transparent about everything you do, as long as you're very objective, and as long as you apply the best science and scholarship. If you have those 3 things, that partnership with the private sector and corporations works out wonderfully, and we hope to do even more.
Right. Dr. Hauser, thank you. I'll yield back the balance of my time and recognize the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And before my time starts, how's your dog doing, Mr. Chairman?
And Mr. Yoho has
Thank you.
utilized his veterinary services to help me solve a problem with my Yorkie. So thank you, Mr. Yoho.
Thank you, sir. Getting back to some of the stuff we were talking about, of course, George Washington said that you can't have a secure nation if you don't have a secure food source. And I commend, again, all the research you guys do that you bring to market. And the question comes up, how much is GMO, how many lives has it saved? And I think all we need to do is look at Dr. Borlaug with the genetic GMO wheat. Billions of people have been saved in the world because of that. And that's a marketing campaign. We could do a retrospective study and just look at the results of what we had. But what I wanted to ask you is, I've got 3 questions. One is the funding mechanism. You have the formula and competitive grants. You guys have all experienced both of these. If you could rewrite how universities get their money, would you come up, do you have ideas that you'd just like to throw off or write a response to us and give us ideas, Dr. Brashier?
I want to jump in just real quick. Texas Tech University does not get the traditional agriculture formula funding because we are not land grant. I think that they're, not at the expense of other universities, the land grant institutions, I do think that there are many large agricultural universities who do not qualify for the formula funding that could benefit from a program that provides some sort of baseline funding for the work that we do. In the words of our dean, Dr. Mike Gallion, he says that Texas Tech has a much larger research footprint than many of our land grant counterparts, and it would be very beneficial for us to move ahead in the research arena if the non-land grant ag-related programs could have some type of program to support them on a very basic foundational level. And I just wanted to jump in and give that before everyone else makes.
I was just curious because, I don't want to take anything from the land grant coming from the University
Absolutely,
of Florida and
yeah.
IFAS. We are very proud of what we get in the research they do, but yet if there's a better mechanism that, that where we think outside of the box about how we can get the money to the researchers and that, take that research again to the marketplace. If you have thoughts on that, feel free to contact our office or anybody on the Ag Committee. The other thing is biosecurity research. This is something, there's a lot of people that don't like our lifestyles of liberty and freedom, and, it's something with the conflicts going on in the world and the unstable political structure of today's world that we've always got to be vigilant about that. Are you guys doing research on, somebody contaminating one of our CAFOs or, our water supply or our food supply, grain elevators? Is there any active research with anybody doing that? And if not, is that something you'd be interested in doing, or? Sounds like crickets.
It is something that we thought long and hard about after 9/11, and there were meetings and studies done in terms of trying to identify those critical industries in Georgia, and I'm sure across the country, that needed to be protected, that we needed to think about what we would do from a security standpoint. And in Georgia, the poultry industry was definitely one of those things that we took a long, hard look at. I don't think that there have really been any research studies done that I'm aware of. It's been more on the practical side, trying to determine where the weaknesses were in those security issues and address those.
Just to add real briefly, there is a network. It's a plant diagnostic network, though it's not quite as striking as some of the animal issues, but there is the plant diagnostic network that does work on issues that would look at, for the example, a purposeful release of plant pathogens to destroy food production, things like that. So that actually came out of after 9/11 and continues today, and Michigan State is one of the regional hubs in that system.
Okay, thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Yoho. Mr. Conaway, Chairman Conaway, you good? Well, again, I want to say thank you to all the witnesses here. I hope you understand how important ag research is to all of the members of this subcommittee. Many of us have the land-grant universities in our districts. We've grown up around some of the progress that land-grant universities have given us, and it was great to hear other stories about universities getting similar designations and working in areas that may not be like mine in central Illinois. I want to thank Chairman Conaway for allowing us to have this hearing to talk about this important subject. And again, each and every one of you deserves our thanks for spending the time and the energy it takes to get out here to Washington, D.C. and talk about agricultural research and its importance to America's ag economy. So the ranking member, Del Bene, has left, but she wanted me to also echo her thanks for being here today. And I have to say, under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any questions posed by a member. This Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research hearing is now adjourned.